Good evening and welcome to a BUGAJSKI Hour special. And our special guest today on the BUGAJSKI hot seat is the Albanian Foreign Minister Edmond Panaritin. And because there's so much ground to cover on Albanian foreign policy and Albania's place in the world, I wanted to devote an entire show, entire interview to you as the #1 diplomat. And let me begin by giving some background on the Foreign Minister, because I think it's intriguing. In his other life, he's actually a professor of toxicology. He served as head of the Department of Environmental Toxicology at the Institute of Veterinary Research. He was head of the Food Safety Section at the Institute of Public Health and was deputy director of the Institute of Veterinary Research. He has been a member of the Socialist Movement of Integration since 2004 and was deputy mayor of Tirana from September 2011 to July 2012. And he has been Albania's, as I said, Albania's #1 diplomat since July this year. Welcome to the show, Edmond.
Thank you for the invitation, Janusz. I am so pleased to be here with you.
So let me begin with the bigger picture. This year is an important landmark for Albania. The country celebrates 100 years of independence, of its statehood. And specifically, since the end of communism, what would you say are the country's major achievements? What has Albania accomplished during this time, the past 20-something years?
Well, that's a good question, Janusz. As a matter of fact, after the democratic turnover took place in Albania, there were some major challenges in front of the new democratic states. And in terms of some prominent achievements, of course, I can mention the membership of Albania to the European Council, and that was really a major achievement. Albania became member of the EU Council in 1995. And of course, you probably know, and everybody knows, that we had the opportunity also to chair the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe this year, which also was a major achievement in terms of foreign policy. And I'm proud to say that Albania did so good in chairing the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe. And we had a very, very successful presidency. I mean, the motto of our presidency was United in Diversity, because I think we can take pride of the fact that we have a very, very good climate of coexistence between different religions, between different cultures, and of course Albania can serve as a model in the Balkans, and not only in terms of promoting, creating the proper climate of coexistence between different religions, between different cultures, and also that is why it is not it was not by occasion that we choose as a motto of our presidency, United in Diversity. And most of our activities during our mandate were related to this motto. And of course, we organized activities in memory of the Holocaust, and also we also organized the youngsters camp, I mean youth camp in Albania, because we think that youngsters, young generation, is the target group where we have to focus to promote tolerance and coexistence and promoting values of mutual understanding. And of course, we had a very successful presidency, and I am just citing the words of the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, which considered the presidency of Albania as a great presidency. And of course, we were able to conclude it in the best way possible. So, and another major achievement was our NATO membership, of course. And NATO membership has been really one of the most significant events in terms of achievements in foreign policy area. NATO membership indicated that Albania has a consolidated democracy, consolidated democratic institutions, and is able to abide to the commitments which of course, are related to the membership in this very prestigious organization, which is a political and also a military organization. But first is a political organization and then military organization. Of course, this was the result of very tight ties that we had previously with the organization in terms of partnership programs, and that was the normal conclusion of this era of very, very tight collaboration that we had with the organization. And you know that Albania has very much actively been involved in the missions of the organization in conflicts area, Afghanistan, Bosnia, and also Iraq. We send our troops, and of course Albania had a very active role in these joint missions which were organized through NATO. So this is another major achievement. And of course there have been other achievements, but these I have selected as two major achievements during the democratic period.
Right. You know, it's always the case that having some targets is very important for foreign policy. So you have the NATO target, of course there's the European Union target, which you can talk about in a minute. What other major targets does Albania have, would you say, over the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, let me start with the most urgent target. I mean, because we have declared that our ambition is that within this year we get the status of EU candidate country. And of course we have had a very positive opinion from the EU Commission recommending to the Council of Ministers of the European Union that Albania be provided the status of candidate country, provided that some commitments would be also respected, such as the endorsement of two important laws which required 3/5 of voting by the parliament. That means a large consensus between the opposition and the majority, and also the parliamentary regulation, which also need to be endorsed by a vast majority. You probably know what's happening right now. We'll see. I hope there is.
There'll be a good decision.
There will be a good decision, and let's hope that by the end of this year, the Council of Ministers will award Albania the status of EU candidate country. And then the next challenge would be the opening of negotiations.
Because it's a long process.
Yes, it's a long process, and then, as you know, the European Union has indicated the organization of fair and normal election as a precondition to the opening of the negotiations, and we have to take special care and focus very much, I mean, both majority and opposition, in providing the normal environment for holding fair and good elections.
Let me ask you regarding, let's stay on the European Union for a moment. The question that I ask quite a few of my interviewees, given the problems within the European Union, which everybody knows, the sovereign debts, the monetary union crisis, as evident particularly in Greece, but also in Italy, in Spain, possibly in France. European Union is going through a recession. Formally now it's in recession. So economic problems, social unrest. What would you say about those who say, well, is the European Union worth joining? Should Albania aspire to join the European Union if the organization is undergoing so many problems? What would be your response?
Well, that's a very good question. As a matter of fact, you indicated that the EU has a lot of problems right now, economic crisis, financial crisis, and but still, and it is a very, I would say, unique event that still nowadays the European integration process enjoys an unwavering support by the Albanian population. And there are some data indicating that more than 90% still nowadays are in favor of the EU integration. And the only reason beyond that is that Albania has suffered so much of a long isolationism for 50 years. And the Albanian people know what that really means. And people, they do not want to get through that appeared again. So they don't want to enter into a new kind of isolationism. That is why even the democratic turnover of the country started with the slogan, let's transform Albania like Europe. Let's transform Albania and make it like Europe. So that was a slogan. And I mean, we have to reflect on that, on this wish, on this persistent wish of the Albanian people. And especially internal politics has to take note of this unwavering wish of getting into EU. And that is why they need to boost the process and not hinder the process. They need to reach the necessary compromise. And actually, the EU agenda should not be part of political agenda of individual parties, because it's a national interest, and they have to respect the unwavering support that the Albanian people is providing to the EU integration. That means that they need to reach the compromise, which, as a matter of fact, was reached for some other important laws. You remember that due to that compromise, they passed very important laws, like the election code law, and also the lifting of the immunity for high officials and judges, which was also endorsed due to the compromise. And I would have hoped that this kind of compromise spirit would have been much more persistent, which is not the case, unfortunately. And I still, I think, well, that might be still some space left to reach that compromise, and so let the process go on and reach the target.
Because one often hears in Europe about something called enlargement fatigue. In other words, that some of the European countries, European member states, will at some point draw a line to further enlargement of the European Union. Do you think that's a threat over the next few years as Europe undergoes this financial and sovereign debt crisis?
To be realistic, it is a threat, because I can notice that, especially in view of the fact that in the upcoming years, next year, Germany will enter the elections, and of course the theme of European enlargement is not so popular when in pre-elections time, and that's quite normal. And the very next year we will have the European elections, so that is why I think it's very, very crucial that Albania obtains the EU status of candidate country this year. Because, I mean, in the upcoming years, we are going through very difficult circumstances, and that has to be understood by our politicians. So they have to do all they can to abide to the commitments in front of the EU commissions, and then provide us diplomats space to do the necessary lobbying in the EU countries to obtain the necessary support, because you know that there are some countries which are not so optimistic, and we have to work with this country. But in order to do that, we have to deliver. If we do not deliver, then of course we have a narrow space of arguing and lobbying with this country to have the necessary support. And that has to be understood. Of course, there is an enlargement fatigue, but there is also a patience fatigue.
Reform fatigue, which...
patience fatigue inside Balkans, because the Albanian people, they need to see results. And so we have to understood that we have to understand that this is also a very, very urgent thing. We have to respect also the ambitions of the Albanian people, which needs concrete results after a long transitional period, and they need to see some positive signs towards reaching the European target.
Well, one of the things that I fear in many respects is that West Europeans and Northern Europeans will look at Greece and Italy and Spain and say, do we want to bring in more Italy's, Greece's and Spain's from the Balkans into the European Union? In other words, that they'll compare you somehow to some of the, let's say, poor performers in the Mediterranean region.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, but Albania is part of Europe. It's geographically part of Europe. I mean, if the European Union has to work inside the geographical boundaries, Albania and Western Balkans are part of Europe, and I mean there is a clear perspective, as indicated by the EU Commission, for these countries to join Europe. Well, it needs sacrifices from both sides, from Albania, from Western Balkans, and also from EU countries. But if the dream of united Europe has to be performed and reached, I mean, both sides have to work to reach this common goal. And they need to leave prejudices against each other and work to create the proper atmosphere to integrate the Western Balkans into EU, because I mean that would be in the interest not only of the Western Balkans but to Europe itself in terms of securing its southern borders.
Better to have inside than keeping
Yes.
outside.
Yes.
We will break now for a few ads. Which are your most important partners, Albania's most important partners, would you say, in the European Union? Is it Italy, Germany?
Well, I will start with my neighbors, because, of course, you have much tighter relations with your neighbors. So Italy is our natural and strategic partners, and one of the biggest supporters of the Albanians towards integration into EU. Greece as well, but then we have also strong allies which pretty much support our EU agenda, like Germany, France, and also countries of the Eastern Bloc, which have recently joined the EU. So, I mean, we have a lot of partners, but of course our neighbors are our strongest partners, and Italy in particular is one of the strongest supporters of the EU, Albanian EU integration path.
And the Germans, the Dutch,
yes,
the French?
The Germans also are supporting pretty much Albania, Dutch as well. But you know, I'm prioritizing a little bit things, starting from the neighbors, with which we have much closer ties due to the vicinity. But of course, yes.
Sure. Would you say, a couple more questions on the European Union before we get to regional issues.
Right.
Do you see the entire region, the Western Balkans, integrated within the Union within the next 10, 15 years?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Although different countries are at different stages, because, for instance, we expect Croatia will enter the next year to the EU, but other countries are at different stages. So, you know that Montenegro has already opened negotiations of accession to the EU. Macedonia, according to the EU Commission recommendation, is supposed to open negotiations probably by the end of this year. Albania has been recommended the status, recommended the status of EU candidate country. Kosovo is also making progress in terms of stability and association agreement. And so you see countries are at different stages, but something is sure and clear, that all countries are projected towards entering the EU. How long it will take, we'll see. I mean, because this is not a question which is seen as a group countries question. So it's a marital-based one, at least this is the approach that the EU is following regarding the accession of Western Balkan states into the EU. It's a marital-based process. But of course, also it's a kind of politically oriented ambition of the EU. Of course, it's a technically based process. The countries have to abide to the rules, to legislation, to the criteria. They have to do the necessary reforms, adopting the necessary laws, but also, and this is prevailing right now. So, because formerly, before I said I had the feeling the process was much more politically boosted, but now it's changing. Now there is much more. So it's prevailing the technical side of abiding to the rules, of doing the necessary reforms and adopting necessary legislation, and so that is happening because right now. The enlargement is not a top priority inside the EU. So the political push is not that strong as it was, let's say, a couple of years ago, before the European crisis was initiating.
10 years is a long time in politics. In the life of multinational institution, it's even longer. There are those that are projecting that Europe over the next few years may begin, if not split, at least to become a multi-speed or multi-tier union with different clusters of countries more integrated than others. What kind of a union do you think by the time Albania is fully ready and accepted, what kind of a union will you be entering?
Difficult to say. Difficult to foresee how the European crisis will evolve, whether Europe will manage somehow to keep under control the financial crisis. So we will see what will happen with the Greek crisis, whether they will try to control the enormous Greek debt by boosting the country to undertake necessary reforms. And also there is the question of Spain, Italy, Ireland, Portugal, which are also in crisis. So difficult to say what will happen, whether Europe will preserve, will exist in 10 years' time as a political union, or it will be somehow as clustered in countries with different, let's say, settings. Difficult to say. We'll see. We have to follow that.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't prevent Albania aspiring to enter.
No. We are well committed to enter. I mean, we have much more to gain getting inside than being outside. That's quite clear.
Let me turn, I'm sure we'll come back to the European Union at some point, but let me turn to Albania's neighborhood, the Western Balkan region. How would you describe Albania's regional role? There are two positions I hear. Some say that Albania plays a very constructive role, has been doing for 20 years, has no major disputes with neighbors, although we'll come to some of the outstanding problems. And there's another position that I've heard that Albania has been too passive in terms of defending its kindred, in other words, the Albanian communities in neighboring countries, Macedonia, Greece, Montenegro, and so forth. How would you respond to that juxtaposition?
Well, I pertain to the first group. I think that Albania has played and continues to play a very active, dynamic, and constructive role in terms of regional collaboration. Albania is surrounded by Albanians. Mm-hmm. So we neighbor to Albanians in Macedonia, we neighbor to Kosovo, which is mostly composed by Albanians. We neighbor to Albanians of Montenegro, Ulcini area. We neighbor to Greece, which has a lot of Albanians, and so we are surrounded by Albanians. And so we have a big responsibility to do our best to support the interests of the Albanians which are living outside our borders. And as a matter of fact, we have been playing a very active role. Immediately I took over as Minister of Foreign Affairs. The first visit that I did was in Kosovo. And I've seen a very, very impressive progress that Kosovo is currently making towards consolidating the state, consolidating democratic institutions. And an example and a proof of that is the lifting of the supervised independence. And of course, we would see, well, you know what our position is regarding Kosovo. We would like to see a sovereign, independent Kosovo exert functions of a normal independent state. And in that regard, of course, we would like that the dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade goes on, but that has to be done under the spirit of respecting the already achieved agreement under the EU. This is a proof that the dialogue will continue. So they have first to implement what has been achieved under EU, and then promote and then go on with the dialogue. And then we would not like to see the application of double standards for Serbian communes. We would see the same standards applied for the communes in the north as it is applied for the communes in the south. So, and I'm referring to Mitrovica. You know that there are some very, very positive indications that the dialogue is resuming at the highest level possible between the two prime ministers, Prime Minister of Kosovo, Hashim Thaçi, and Prime Minister of Serbia have already met and of course under the the presence of Secretary of State Clinton and Baroness Ashton. And of course, an important step is that both states are willing to respect the territorial integrity, which is a major achievement. And of course, I expect, and I made it clear to my colleague Merkic when he paid a visit in Albania, that I said I greet this process. That's the way things should be conducted, and I would expect that at the end of this process, Serbia recognizes Kosovo.
Right. Let's stay with Kosovo for a moment. I want to come back to Serbia in terms of Albania's bilateral relations. But there are movements now in both countries, both in Albania and Kosovo, that say the best solution is unification. That as a single country, will be a bigger country, will be a stronger country demographically, be more economically viable, will be more of a power to be able to, let's say, move into the European Union, to exert our national interest in the region. What would be your response to that?
No, I would say that the question of borders in the Balkans has been established. There is no need to revise, otherwise we will enter into new troubles. By the way, the common goal of both countries, of Kosovo and Albania, is to enter EU. And then you will have virtual borders, by the way, because you will be part of a larger community. And then, so our common challenge is to boost our relations, improve economy, develop infrastructure. You have noticed that now we are making major efforts in developing a proper infrastructure, especially in northern part of Albania. We have a new highway. Now I can reach Pristina in less than 3 hours, which was not
very good.
Okay,
yeah.
You see, so these are very good investments which bring the two states, bring people together. I mean, and boosting economy, facilitating the movements of people, of services, of goods. That's the way. That is the way. And we do not have to stick on this pretensions of revising borders and getting united. I mean, we have to be realistic. Balkan has suffered a lot because of that.
Certainly. Would you say, you know, one of the problems for Kosovo is that 5 European Union countries do not recognize? In other words, it's not exactly blocking, but if it comes to eventual entry towards European Union, as you know, all the parliaments have to ratify.
Yes.
And if there are 5 blocking, maybe there'll only be 2 or 3 at that time. Some actually say that Cyprus will continue blocking even beyond Serbia in terms of recognition. What would be your response? What does the European Union need to do to have a more coherent, united voice on Kosovo?
Well, as you said, there are still 5 countries who have not yet recognized Kosovo. As a matter of fact, any times that I meet with the foreign minister of these countries, on the top of my agenda is to invite them to reconsider this position. I've done that with the Minister of Greece, Avramopoulos, and he said that we're moving ahead in that direction. He said that now we are opening a new an office of Pristina in Athens, and now actually Greece is recognizing passports. So these are good steps ahead, which will probably be finalized with the recognition of Kosovo by Greece. And the very same situation exists with Slovakia. They are recognizing Kosovo documents, and it might be possible that an office of Kosovo will be opened in Slovakia, in Bratislava. And
Spain, presuming there's one Spain.
Spain is a little bit more rigid on that in that regard because of known circumstances with Basque and things like that. But Catalonia, and but of course we see a much more positive dynamics in terms of changing position from these states towards recognizing the independence of Kosovo. On the other hand, we are pretty much getting active in asking other countries outside the European borders to recognize Kosovo. During my last visit in Tunisia, I visited Tunisia in my capacity as President of the Committee of Ministers of Council of Europe. But I took the opportunity to talk to the Foreign Minister of Tunisia and ask him to recognize Kosovo. And of course, he's willing to do that very soon. And so there might be other countries at the beginning of next year that will most probably recognize Kosovo, bringing the number of the total recognition to up to 100. And you need, you know, 2/3 of the countries to recognize Kosovo before Kosovo can apply for full membership into EUN. But Kosovo is also successfully applying for membership in international organizations such as IBRD.
They just
received it.
Right.
And there are good chances that Kosovo might be a member of UNESCO because the votes are. And we have to avail of this opportunity to boost that membership. So I was talking to Hoxha, my counterpart. He said that we will get very much dynamic and aggressive in applying for membership in international organization as a preamble to our full accession to the UN.
General Assembly.
So this is our very positive development. I'm quite optimistic that we will have very positive developments next year regarding that issue.
You mentioned an interesting case which has always baffled me a little bit. Not all the Muslim countries have recognized Kosovo. I remember when Kosovo declared, or before it declared independence, there was a feeling that most, particularly the moderate Muslim states, would recognize a state in which a majority of the population are Muslim. Why hasn't that happened? Why have there been so many holdouts?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I must admit that we had a large expectancy, a big expectancy that many Muslim countries would recognize soon Kosovo, which unfortunately was not the case, although Albania, you know, is member of the Islamic Conference. But I think we still are doing our best inside the Islamic Conference to make Muslim countries consider recognizing the independence of Kosovo as soon as possible. And yes, and I think we will also have some positive developments regarding the Muslim countries, which, of course, I think many of them are much near to changing their position in recognizing the independence of Kosovo.
Let me turn now to Serbia. You mentioned the visit of Prime Minister Mrkić.
Foreign Minister.
Sorry, Foreign Minister, say Prime Minister. Foreign Minister Mrkić. What is the state of relations, would you say, between Serbia, between Belgrade and Tirana? What are the outstanding challenges? I mean, other than Kosovo, what else is there on the table?
Actually, I mean, we had we lost considerable time, as a matter of fact. Albania was interested in resuming collaboration and cooperation with Serbia, but for some reasons which I think most of the responsibility lie on the Serbian side, for that it was not yet possible. So I pretty much welcomed the desire of Minister Mrkić to visit Albania, and he indicated that wish, and of course we agreed on that. But I indicated to Mr. Mrkić that of course he's welcomed in Albania, he was welcomed in Albania, but I insisted that we need to substantiate the visit, we need the results. There are 14 agreements in between the two states which need to be endorsed, and that has not happened until now. So I urged him to consider signing some of this agreement, and I insisted first and foremost on the signing of the agreement for the mutual recognition of diplomas. When he visited Albania, I had large expectancies that the signing of this agreement would happen during his visit, but unfortunately that was not the case. Most probably we are going to do during my upcoming visit in Belgrade. But
when are you in Belgrade?
Well, probably by the end of March next year.
Okay.
But it still needs to be confirmed. We share the same opinion that, you know, in order to be serious and to be committed in boosting our relations, we need to deliver.
Sure.
To deliver signed agreements in all areas. In mutual recognition of diploma, custom agreements, transport agreements, recognition of driving license for our citizens. So these are concrete achievements which indicate, of course, the wish of the two countries, the genuine wish of two countries to boost and to promote a future collaboration. I hope that this spirit of providing concrete results will prevail, and will. So far we have right now only indicated the wish to boost our relations, but we have not yet reached any agreement. So I think that now it's time to deliver. And even Mr. Merkic indicated and shared the same opinion. So I hope during my Belgrade visit we will be able to sign some agreements.
Some of the 14. There have been a few statements before the previous Serbian government, but also some members of the present Serbian government have suggested the partition of Kosovo, in which Serbia would get a slice and Albania would get the bigger slice. Have they sounded you on this this scenario, this
No,
possibility?
Because I insisted that when we had bilaterals with Serbia, we focus on bilateral issue, because I think the questions between Kosovo and Serbia should be addressed by themselves as two sovereign states. So I made known, but he knows already what is our position regarding Kosovo. We are for sovereign Kosovo, an independent Kosovo, which exerts full capacity as an independent state. But we leave it to the two states to dialogue and to reach consensus on issues of common interest.
Is Albania contributing to that dialogue between Kosovo? You mentioned before that you're supportive and so forth. Is there anything Albania can do to facilitate that dialogue?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think I indicated that that wish directly to Minister Merkic. I said that we are pretty much interested that the dialogue goes ahead, focus on technical issue first, which need to be addressed by the two countries. But of course, there are certain issues which I think, in our view, should be considered as solved. I mean, we never question the integrity of Kosovo. We never question the sovereignty of Kosovo. And that includes even the northern part of Kosovo, Mitrovica. And of course, the Serbian attitude is different. But this is our position regarding Kosovo.
Let me turn now to another neighbor, to Macedonia. Do you fear instability in Macedonia? The country is stuck in its progress towards NATO and the EU because of this name dispute with Greece, as we know. Albanian population, I think, will get more and more frustrated the longer this impasse continues. We did last year, or this year actually, have a series of incidents, violent incidents between some members of the two major ethnic communities. Do you fear instability in Macedonia?
Unfortunately, there are not so many positive signs in Macedonia. First, regarding the relations between the two major communities, Macedonian community and the Albanian community. The situation remains tense because of certain not positive developments regarding the adoption of a law, which is the law on special forces, which should include also the contribution of the Albanian side with the National Liberation Army, or the Albanian National Liberation Army, which should be part of this law, but which appears not to be the case, and that has frustrated a lot of the Albanian community. And unfortunately, I see that Prime Minister BUGAJSKI is still committed to push that law and endorse it by the parliament without having the consensus of the Albanian side, and that has a little bit fueled up tensions. I think still there are some possibilities to refrain endorsing that law and pass it for further discussion and amendments so to respect also the wish of the Albanian people. And there is also the question of, so there is not a proper climate. And I think that both sides, Macedonian and Albanian side, should respect what has been reached under the Ohrid Agreement. This is the basis of good coexistence, of good governments. Unless they don't respect the Ohrid agreements, the climate will get worse and worse. So we insist very much that both sides respect on what has been agreed in Ohrid agreement. And the situation about the name, they should put an end to that. It's going too long, and it's refraining Macedonia in the European integration process and in its membership to NATO. Quite frankly, I indicated that wish to Minister Popovsky, and I said that, of course, Macedonians have to refrain nationalism inside, which does not promote the reaching of a compromise, of agreement upon the name, and so both sides should refrain by boosting nationalistic feelings, populism, and find a proper way out and reach a consensus on the names that would release, then pave the way to Macedonia to go ahead with EU integration and membership in NATO. So we pretty much hope that the situation will change. Right now, it looks that not so much has been achieved in that regard.
And bilateral relations between Tirana and Skopje, any outstanding questions that still need resolution?
Actually, we are very much concerned with the situation of the Albanians in Macedonia, and of course the relation with this, with the Macedonian state or the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia will of course be based on the conditions of the Albanian community there, about their economic status, about their rights in terms of getting the proper education, about their representatives in local government and in central government, and this will of course with that criteria should be measured the relations between Macedonia and Albania. And of course I've met with Mr. Popovsky several times, so we are now preparing to organize a bilateral, but first, moreover, I have met several times with the Albanian political leaders. I met them in Ohrid with Ali Ahmeti and with the leader of the Albanian opposition,
Mendutaci.
Mendutaci. Mm-hmm. And also they were my guests in Tirana as well. I would like to see more cohesion between the Albanian political forces in protecting the interests of the Albanian community.
Can Tirana be a facilitator?
Well, we are trying to do our best, especially in view of the fact that next year, in March, they will enter into local elections. Mm-hmm. And unless they do not cooperate, especially in selecting joint candidates in those areas where it is almost certain, if they run separately, they will lose. Mm-hmm. They have to work together and select joint candidates in order to increase the weight, to increase the representation of the Albanian elected members mm-hmm. in local governments. Otherwise, it will be a disaster. I hope that they will work on that, and we will do whatever we can to bring these forces together in that regard.
We will break now for a few ads. Another neighbour, maybe this is an easier question, Montenegro. I know Albania traditionally has good relations with Montenegro. New government, looks like Milo Đukanović may be coming back as Prime Minister. Do you see any problems here? In other words, the position of the Albanian community? There's been calls for more decentralization, the implementation of some of these local government laws. Do you see any problems ahead?
Well, as you indicated, we have very good relations with Montenegro, and of course the Albanian community is a bridge that connects the two countries. Of course there are still problems which need to be addressed by the central authorities regarding the Albanian community, but we are working in an open, constructive way with the Montenegrin authorities to overcome these problems. And I'm optimistic because my counterpart is really an open-minded person, and so he was open to hear to what I was referring to him in terms of respecting the rights of the Albanian minority in Montenegro and doing whatever we can to see them much more represented at all levels of governments and administration.
Slightly more difficult question, Greece. Albania's relations with Greece. I know you visited Athens recently, and you raised several very important questions, the maritime border question, the Chameria question. How would you characterize relations with Greece? Where do things stand now? What's the way forward?
I had the opportunity to meet with Dimitris Avramopoulos, my good friend, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Greece, and we met first during the UN Assembly. And during our first meeting, I indicated to him the wish that we put on the table every single issue that lies between the two countries. This was my approach, questions belonging to the past and current issues. And I was very much pleased that Mr. Avramopoulos had no prejudice at all. He said, please, Edmond, go ahead and put whatever you think you deem it's important in terms of our relations. So I started by raising historical questions, like Chameria questions and questions of Albanian properties in Greece. And of course, I didn't expect that the Greek position would be as we would like it to be. Of course, Mr. Avramopoulos indicated that he considers the questions of Chameria and the Albanian real estates or properties in Greece as a question which should be addressed by individual citizens to the Greek courts. That was his approach. We see it a little bit different, but I mean, we put them on the table. And of course, there are a lot of other issues which interest the citizens, such as reaching an agreement on traveling documents, certificates, we should reach a compromise regarding some toponyms, which has been a matter of discordance right now, and which are creating some obstacles for our citizens to freely move throughout the borders. And then we need to work on other important issues such as public transport agreements. We have to work on reaching some agreements regarding the mutual recognition of driving license, and and of course the maritime borders issue, which.
Where do things stand now on this maritime question?
You know that our position on that issue is rather firm. We have a constitutional court verdict, which of course has declared void, null, the former agreement. And we have to start, right now there is no agreement at all regarding maritime borders issue with Greece. And we have to start from that point. So of course, is Albania interested to reach an agreement? Of course, yes, because we need to know the extent of our sovereignty over that area. But for that we have to carefully work. And we have to rely on the international agreements, on sea conventions, and also we have to rely on our internal legislations. And under this spirit, I conveyed this message to my counterpart, asking for him to work on creating the proper background to start to talk and negotiate on that issue to reach a new agreement. Mr. Avramopoulos indicated his wish that he would like to see that under the full respect of international laws. So that was his position. Yes, that is all about.
Well, still staying with Greece, we've seen, particularly after the last elections, the rise of more radical forces in Greek politics, particularly this Golden Dawn, which some have described as a neo-fascist movement. Do you see that this is a potential danger for the region? In other words, rising nationalism in one state could provoke nationalism amongst neighbors.
This is becoming a Balkan phenomenon. Well, in Greece, you have a Golden Dawn, but you have also similar movements or organizations all over the place. I mean, Macedonia and Serbia. Even in Albania, there are some signs of increasing nationalism, which are trying to fuel up and speculate on some so-called patriotism feelings, which have nothing to do with patriotism, but which are oriented to more specific political goals, especially in view of the fact that we are heading towards organizing parliamentary elections next year. Mm-hmm. So we have to contribute, I mean, both countries, Greece, Albania, Macedonia, Montenegro, to create the proper climate of refraining these nationalist forces prevail and spoil the climate of good collaboration. That is why promoting dialogue, signing agreement, reaching concrete results will contribute to decrease the tensions, because these nationalistic feelings or movements are boosted, are fueled up when things are at stake, when there is no development in the relations. So by contributing with concrete results in boosting our relation, we will succeed in refraining these tendencies. And,
that's right. Nationalism is also boosted by poor economic conditions, and the prospects for Greece do not look good over the coming year or two. In fact, for the region, I've recently read a World Bank report for the broader region that economic growth is not projected for the region as a whole for the next year.
It will be a tough year, for sure.
How does that affect Albania?
Look, let me put it like that. You know that there are almost 700,000 of Albanians still living and working in Greece, mm-hmm. and of course the Greek crisis is heavily affecting them as well. They are losing their jobs. Most of them are returning home, comporting an additional burden to our government in terms of creating social services or creating some new employments, which is very difficult nowadays. But there is also a positive side out of that, because due to the panic created in the Greek financial systems, most of the Albanians transferred their money out of the Greek banks and put them inside our banking system, which is now availing of a super liquidity, which is good. Mm-hmm. But when you compare it to the level of crediting, this is not so good. So our challenge would be, and the National Bank of Albania should have a very prominent role in that regard, to find the proper mechanism how to inject that money to boost the economy, to contribute to the creation of new businesses, to start crediting businesses, crediting the economy. So we have to take advantage of that, and I hope that we will try to find the proper mechanism how to inject that money. Because, I mean, in other countries you have lack of liquidity, but right. In Albania this is not the case. The opposite problem, so we have to take advantage of this.
You mentioned the importance of bilateral agreements. What about regional cooperation in the West Balkans? What do you see as the most important areas? Trade, energy, infrastructure, all the above? You know, where should the focus be?
Look, per se, Balkan countries are small countries. I mean, so not so attractive to foreign investments, considering the magnitude of the country, the number of consumers, things of that kind. So the challenge is to create a joint market, and developing the proper infrastructure, easing up with the lifting of the visa regime. Now we have reached considerable progress in that regard. Now our citizens can freely travel simply with an ID. They can enter Montenegro, they can enter Macedonia, they are about to enter Serbia. So by doing that, developing the proper infrastructure and also removing fiscal barriers and customs barriers, we create a unique market, a big market. I mean, which will have potentially 10 million of consumers, which will be pretty much more interesting than a market of 2 million of consumers. And by doing that, we will get much more attractive to foreign investments, which will boost the economy of individual countries. That would be the challenge ahead. And there are some good developments regarding it. You probably know that a major breakthrough was achieved in terms of signing a trio agreement between Italy, Greece, and Albania regarding trans-Adriatic pipelines.
I was going to come to this in a moment. Yes.
Okay, well.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going ahead.
You preempted me.
This was, of course, an excellent example of regional collaboration, because we are collaborating in a very successful way with our neighbors. So we signed a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. We are about to sign an intergovernmental agreement, which of course will decrease the chances of TAP, Trans-Adriatic Pipelines, as the winning project at the end of the assessment period, which I hope will end up by March next year, when Charles Denis Consortium will make the final decision. But it looks that TAP project, Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, has much bigger chances compared to Nabucco West. And we pretty much hope that it will be the winning project. But that would have not been possible if the three states would have not convened and agreed to politically support the project, which was fortunately the case. And you probably followed our signing ceremony in New York, when the three ministers, the Minister of Albania, the Minister of Greece, and the Minister of Italy, signed the Memorandum of Understanding. And we should work under the same spirit by signing similar collaboration treaties or agreements for other issues of joint interest. That would be the way how I see collaboration at the regional level.
And presumably this is very important at a time when, on the energy side, where Russia is aggressively pursuing the South Stream project.
Oh, yes.
Having signed agreements with all the countries. I think in the groundbreaking ceremony is due in Russia on the 7th of December, more or less, in which now Bulgaria is involved, Serbia is involved. In other words, Russia trying to gain a more monopolistic position with regards to natural gas supplies to Europe. Albania doesn't fit into that picture.
It doesn't right now. And I see it as a policy of diversifying the routes of energy. So we should not get dependent only on one provider of gas, and I see it as a rather positive development. I mean, it's a wide strategy of diversifying the energetic routes, and TAP is an indication of that that approach, that we need to diversify. So TAP is another alternative, so we don't have to rely only on one provision regarding the gas supply coming from Russia, but from other sources as well. So, and that is a very, very good approach, I think.
Realistically speaking, when will TAP be built?
Well, first we have to wait for the final decision, and there, of course, I think by 2015 it should be concluded as a big project, and of course, and the benefit of TAP for Albania is because Albania is a transient country. I mean, transitory country when the pipeline crosses before reaching Italy. So I think by having the pipeline crosses our territory, we will have a big opportunity of gasifying Albania, of developing the appropriate infrastructure inside the country to gasify Albania. So we will have an alternative source of energy apart from the hydropower energy and fuel energy to boost our economy and household needs. And by developing that infrastructure, of course, we will attract other potential investors to contribute in developing that infrastructure. And it has been estimated that by the completion of the TAP pipeline inside our territory, 2,000 new employment opportunities, 2,000 new jobs will be created, which will be, of course, a very important contribution to relieving the status of unemployment in Albania.
Plus transit revenue and
transit revenues and all these things will provide a major contribute to boosting our economy.
Does Albania have a specific energy security strategy, or is this something that you're now working on? I mean, a regional strategy?
Of course, you know, we are working on developing an energetic strategy which is based on diversification, because you know that now most of our energy supplies are ensured by hydropower energy, and we are pretty much relying on the major hydropower plants. We rely mostly in the northern part of Albania, but now with the privatization policy and providing of license for small hydropowers, we're trying to expand the map of hydropower plants being built and put under operation all over Albania. And this is a very interesting and very good approach. And of course, but we don't have to rely only on hydropower, which still will remain the most prominent source of energy, considering the fact of our vast water resources. But of course, as I said before, we need also to diversify our energy supply, and TAP will provide an alternative. And also fuel and coal needs to be investigated as, and also alternative sources of energy like solar energy and also aeolic energy, because there are discussions that we might also exploit wind energy, especially in the southern part of Albania, in Karaburuni area, to have it as an alternative. So that would be a strategy of covering our energetic needs by diversifying the sources of the provision of energy. And that is a very wise approach, because sticking only to one source can be sometimes dangerous.
We mentioned Russia in terms of the energy nexus. What are Tirana's relations like with Moscow at this point, and how do you see Russian policy towards the region in a more general framework?
Well, we have normal relations with Russia, and of course we are willing to increase the level of collaboration at the level of political exchanges, diplomatic exchanges. Of course, we are also interested to boost our economic exchange. There has been an interest of Russian investors to enter Albania in energy area, of course. There were some expressions of interest to privatize Alpetrol. As far as I know, one Russian enterprise, Gazprom, entered into the bid. And
state enterprise, not a private enterprise.
Yes, I'm sorry. The state enterprise, Gazprom, entered into the bid. That indicates the interest of the Russian Federation to invest in the energetic area. There are interests from the Russian side to invest in infrastructure as well. But I see a growing interest of Russia in the Balkans, and that can be seen in Montenegro. There are large investments. There is a large aluminium plant.
Which has gone bankrupt since the Russian investor came in.
Yeah, but still,
I mean, has to bail it out.
Yes. I mean, there is a growing interest in terms of buying real estates and being present in tourism areas. But Russia is far from the Balkans. I mean, Balkans are not in the vicinity of Russia. But of course, Russia would like to boost its influence in the Balkans, and it is quite evident. For instance, the relations with Serbia are getting much tighter in terms of investments of Russian enterprises in Serbia, and also the intention of Russia to contribute financially to ease up the debts of Serbia, and by financially getting committed inside the country. And of course, there is also some, Russia has also been considered as a patron of Orthodoxism in the Balkans. I mean, and that can be seen. The Orthodox Church has had and is still keeping traditional ties with the Orthodox Patriarch of Russia. And so there is also that kind of traditional, cultural and religious connections between the Orthodox religions in Serbia and in Greece with the Russian Orthodox Church. Because, you know, Balkan, you see, Balkan is a place when different religions, different culture, if you want to put it like that, coexist, and so there is, of course, a cross-border region for the influence of major powers as well, Russia.
Except for Russia, it's always often been instrumental. They've played off
Turkey also.
They've played off Bulgaria
yes.
against Serbia, so it's not all, let's say, orthodox altruism. There's
yes,
national interest behind it.
National interest, of course, is pretty much behind that.
What about Russia's position on Kosovo? Presumably, I mean, they're blocking in the UN Security Council Kosovo's recognition.
Well, it still stands pretty much the same, but now I see some positive development. I see a kind of easing up of the rigid positions of Russia towards Kosovo, because they're now very much after promoting the dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade, and I see it as a very positive sign. And so I see some easing up of their position, which was very much rigid before. And I hope that their position will get even more constructive in the period to come.
Let's turn to another country. I suppose you could call it a regional power, but it's also outside the region, Turkey. How do you see Turkey's role? Well, first of all, your relations, Albania's relations with Turkey, and the broader picture of Turkey's role in the Balkans.
Well, Turkey is a Balkan country, so it doesn't lie outside.
That's why I said partly in the region,
but,
partly outside.
Yes, I mean, I've noticed that, especially in the last decade, Turkey is playing a very proactive role in the Balkans, as a matter of fact, and I would see the Turkish growing interest and contributions in the Balkan as a contribution to the stability, peace, and integrity of the entire area. And that is why I would really appreciate the growing interest of Turkey in terms of boosting the economy of the countries, in terms of promoting the regional collaboration with all the Balkan states. You know that in 2010, I suppose that was the time, Turkey reached an agreement with Serbia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, which was much more focused on preservation of the integrity of Bosnia-Herzegovina, although it was not pretty much respected, but that indicated the wish and the constructive role of Turkey to preserve the integrity of the borders of the Balkans, and which I consider it as a very, very constructive and a very, very wise approach. And of course, you know that Turkey has been one of the first countries to recognize the independence of Kosovo, and has actively participated also in the missions of NATO during 1998, which ended up with the independence of Kosovo. And I see also an increasing role of Turkey in the Balkans in terms of investments. We see more and more Turkish investment coming in Albania, but not only in Albania, but also in other countries. In Kosovo, we have a substantial increase of the presence of the financial Turkish institutions, banking, and also other businesses. This is also the case of Albania. And when I met with my counterpart in Istanbul, Davutoglu, he was very much eager to see the role of Turkey in terms of economic presence and trade relations get higher and higher in the Balkans, and especially in Albania, which is, of course, very much welcomed.
Sure. We will break now for a few ads. We've talked about Albanian communities in neighboring countries, particularly immediate neighbors, Macedonia, Montenegro, Greece. Turkey supposedly has the largest Albanian population outside of Albania.
6 million, I think,
well, even
more.
bigger than Albania. How would you characterize the position of one doesn't hear very much about the Albanian community in Turkey. What position are they in?
Oh yeah, they're very much fully integrated into the Turkish society. So, and of course, they keep their ties with the Albania. They even preserve language, culture, and traditions. When I was in Istanbul, I met with a lot of them, and they were very much interested and eager to know what was happening in Albania about the latest political development, and they were very much willing to contribute, to invest in Albania. So this is, of course, a very strong asset that we have.
So it's an influential community.
It's an influential community, which is also very good politically represented in Turkey, and they have, of course, strong ties in Turkey, in politics, in the economic settings and financial settings. So we have to take advantage out of this in terms of boosting the relations between the two countries.
Do they visit Albania?
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Tourists
so. You know, when I took the plane and got back to Albania, the plane was full with Turkish Albanian Turkish, so Albanian diaspora. Going and moving and coming and getting out. So there is a lot of dynamism.
Presumably quite a few of those people, at least their parents, were amongst those that were expelled from the Chameria area.
Yes.
Can they visit? Can they visit their ancestral areas in what's now northern Greece?
Yes, I mean, oh yeah, of course they are Turkish citizens. They can enter as free citizens the country, and I suppose they can also visit such areas. I don't know whether they have some claims on the properties that they apparently should have in Greece, and whether they are entering into some kind of claims to see their properties returned. This is another issue, but of course they can visit those places as free citizens.
Next question. America. It's inevitable that we're going to come to the United States sooner or later. I leave the best till last, as I always joke. But do you think America is going to remain as an important factor in Southeast Europe? And sort of related question, what would be your message to the second Obama administration? What does America need to do to help this region achieve its potential?
You know, after the end of the Cold War, we have seen much more American interest, a growing interest in the Balkans, especially in view of what happened in the former Yugoslavia. After the war started in Slovenia in 1991, the Bush administration at that time position was that question was a European problem that need to be solved inside Europe. But then with the later developments, it became quite clear that that was not simply an European issue, and that the American stand pretty much changed. We've seen a much more direct involvement of the American politics regarding the Balkans, and they played a crucial role. I'm not going now to recall what has happened in terms of their contribution with the Dayton Agreement and also with their direct contribution as part of NATO in in preventing the genocides and also the massive deportation of Kosovo Albanians during the war in Serbia, where the United States of America played a crucial role. And in 1998, I think it was Clinton administration which launched an action plan in the Balkans, indicating the wish to collaborate strongly and tightly with the new democracies. I mean, in terms of promoting regional collaboration, strengthening the rule of law, consolidation of democratic institutions, and so it was a clear will of the American administration to boost the economies of this country, to strengthen ties with the Western Balkans, and to pave the way of integration of such countries into Europe and in NATO and Euro-Atlantic sphere. So there is now, and I think that this engagement of the United States and this commitment of the United States in the Western Balkans will remain the same or even get higher, and I would expect that the Obama administration increases its interest and collaboration in the Western Balkans, because it will, of course, contribute in the preservation of the stability and peace in the region. And then Western Balkans are a strategic area of interest for the United States. because they are at the crossroad to the Middle East. And also, you know, if you want to put it, I mean, Balkan is par excellence an area where two cultures collide. I mean, the Eastern culture coming from the Middle East with the Christian culture. I mean, coming basically from Europe. And I mean, and keeping that area stable, and by promoting coexistence of different cultures, coexistence of different religions, would sure contribute to the stability of the Balkans, to the stability of Europe, and that is why I am sure that there will be growing interest in being present by the United States in this area to boost the regional collaboration between the countries, and also the model of coexistence between different tradition, culture, and religions.
I really hope you're right, but there are those in Washington that think not even so much about the Balkans, but that with this Eastern pivot or Asia pivot by the United States, that there is generally less focus on the European Union. In other words, if you notice during the debates between Obama and Mitt Romney, the presidential debates, Europe wasn't even mentioned, or one or two countries were mentioned in passing, but as related to something else. In other words, that America hasn't been focused enough on the crisis that Europe is now entering. Do you see this as a danger, that America may, let's say, pivot towards other regions and be less focused on Europe?
Oh, well, in terms of foreign policy, we have to be realistic. There is a shifting of power, you know, towards Far East Asia. And of course, that will also attract the interest of the American policy and interest and shift. But still, I'm pretty much sure that the United States will not retract, will not decrease their interest in the Balkans, because after all, they have invested so much in that area. I mean, they have contributed, they've paid an amazing contribution in preserving stability and promoting the consolidation of new democracies in this area. I mean, the role of the United States has been amazing. Has been well, I would say the United States, especially during the Balkan Wars, played the crucial role, and I don't think that the United States will give up and leave this area, because there has been so much attention and contribution by the United States in preserving the integrity of this area, in promoting the regional collaboration between several countries. So I'm sure that the interest will still remain in this area, and the American contribution will be an ongoing one even in the years to come.
My very last question concerning the Albanian diaspora. It's been very important, I think, for the country's development, bringing to attention where Albania is, what it is, and what its potential is. What would you say are the most important diaspora communities, the most effective diaspora communities politically?
Well, that's a good question. I think the diaspora, Albanian diaspora, plays an important and crucial role, especially in promoting the image of the Albanian democracy, the Albanian state outside our borders. And also economically it's important, because they contribute with their financial commitments, investments in promoting the Albanian economy. Well, of course, the U.S. diaspora is one of the most prominent and they have long traditional ties with the United States. They are actively involved in the American political life, and so, of course, and they also contribute in improving and boosting the relation between the United States of America and Albania. But of course, we have a large diaspora in other countries as well. You know, in our neighboring countries, I mean, in Italy, in Greece, we have in Italy we have 500,000 of Albanians. In
Switzerland is
in
another
Switzerland,
one, yeah.
we have in Austria, in Canada, in Australia, because I paid a visit in Australia. I was pretty much amazed. There are about 20,000 of Albanians which now lives and work in Australia, and they were so happy that I visited them. And of course, they have their businesses. They are willing also to contribute. They are very much interested about the developments of the country. They are even willing to contribute in boosting our economy. Some of them are very, very prominent business people in Australia, and so they would like to contribute, especially in certain areas like the mining sector. I met some of them, and so they were very much interested to pay a contribution in boosting our economy.
What would be your message to the diaspora, particularly in America, where I'm from? During the time of the Kosovo War, Kosovo's independence, NATO membership, there were some very concrete causes that the diaspora could be mobilized for. But European Union doesn't have that much enthusiasm amongst Albanian Americans. What would be your message to them? Why should they maintain that interest, that involvement in Albanian issues?
Well, yeah, because they are much nearer to the biggest power center. Because they are American voters, and that they can exert their influence in the American policy, and so they can promote much better, even much better than the Albanian diplomacy, the Albanian interest, because they are part of the American society, and they have good connections. They are even represented in politics. That we have a member we have a Albanian member in the local government of New York getting elected, and so they are pretty much active. They are very much integrated into the American life. They have strong ties with the politics, so of course they have a major role to play in promoting the image of Albania and also attracting the attention of the American administration towards problems of Albania. And so I think that the Albanian diaspora should go on to exert its very, very important role in boosting the relations between the United States and Albania, as they did during the Kosovo crisis. But still, I think there are other challenges ahead where we expect that the diaspora would contribute by sensibilizing Washington to get more active involved in support of the Albanian causes.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for your time, for your openness. I'd like to have you back at some point, and congratulations on your important work on behalf of Albania, and congratulations on 100 years of independence.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I would be more than happy to come another time here and meet and talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, unfortunately, we have already come to the end of the show, to this BUGAJSKI hour special. Good night, everyone. Stay healthy, be productive, and remain optimistic. Miro Pavshin.